Hi, this is Mark Meir, the voice of Commander Shepard, and you're tuned in to the EnteR ChazmaN podcast, my favorite podcast on the Citadel. ChazmaN and Phoenix, let the conversations begin. To the Normandy.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? EnteR ChazmaN here, and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of the EnteR ChazmaN podcast, where, as always, this is your place to hear about all of the major video game news and other media news that has kind of caught the attention of me and my buddy Phoenix throughout the week. As always, feel free to check out some of the audio podcast locations. Do check out video highlights that I post throughout the week to make it easier for you guys. And, of course, we would love to respond to any interaction or engagement from you guys. So feel free to comment and do all the social media stuff. So here's my buddy Phoenix. He's out of the basement. What's up, Phoenix? How you been?
Oh, I've been all right. Now this was actually a good week. You took me out of the basement on a little field trip, and you treated me to a movie. That was nice. So it's been a good week. But now I'm back in the basement, nice and damp. So
yep, movie theaters are still around. I was surprised to see it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys don't know, I actually used to be a manager at a movie theater, and that movie theater, Regal.
Assistant to the regional manager.
To the regional manager, yeah. And then they just posted for bankruptcy, so now it's like, it felt weird kind of walking in after they announced bankruptcy to see a movie.
I saw another updated article about that today where I guess they're saying, oh, we're filing, but we're still going to stay up and running up to and through the bankruptcy. But I can't think of many big companies that have filed for that bankruptcy chapter and then continued for very long. I think
the whole taking advantage of Chapter 11.
Yeah, that's what it is.
They always say.
Like, that's what Circuit City did when it first went under. That's
sure
what
Radio
Toys R Us
did.
Yeah. So I don't know. Movies have been going out for a while. They'll become a niche thing, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, I don't know. It's a hard thing. I definitely understand when people don't go to the theater as much as they used to. I think COVID kind of spurred everybody, to basically make their own home theater. Realize that's far more convenient and far cheaper in the long run. So
I was comforting a buddy who still worked there with that ideal. I'm like, oh well, good thing is theater chains always get bought out by somebody else. But it's like,
who's gonna buy it out? Like, so another movie company would usually buy out a space like that. But
they probably wouldn't keep the same staff, so it's like
definitely wouldn't do that. But even then, I don't think the market is really good for that right now. Like, I know AMC is doing okay-ish. I think primarily just because last year their stock was kind of like a pseudo meme stock when the GameStop thing was going on. Yeah. So I think that kept them afloat. But I don't think they were going to turn around and buy. Is it Cinemark? Is that the owner of Regal or something like that?
I think so. Yeah, some European chain. They bought them out when I worked there years ago.
I think most of them are just trying to stay, afloat at this point. So big purchases like that, probably not much of a thing. But I don't know. If you're a movie fan, better see your last few movies now, because a couple of years they might be a little harder to come by.
I'm gonna be real disappointed if this movie we saw was the last movie I saw in a movie theater.
We'll get to that.
We gotta go back and wash that movie out of our mouths. But just a quick tease for some of the topics we have for today. Me and Phoenix each have a game we both played this week. Then heading into our major topics, we have one lightning round where we have two little rounds, two topics put in there Phoenix decided to do. And then we're going to talk about the Embracer Group and some more of their embracingness of some other company. And then, we'll talk about our movie that we watched. And then we're going to go into Season 3 of The Boys. I finally am caught up to the masses. I'm ready for Season 4. Now I can start talking about that. All right, so me and Phoenix this week got to each play a game. I guess I'll go straight into my game first, seeing as how I started mine just before you. But I finally got to play the kitty cat simulator game Stray that everyone had been talking about a week or two prior. And I will say for me, my feelings are not that strong for this game. I saw some people, I don't know if people were memeing or joking, because I saw a lot of people kind of saying, Stray, Game of the Year. People were putting it above Elden Ring. That kind of became a joke for a bit. I'm assuming that was a joke because I didn't necessarily walk away thinking this was a bad game, but it's to me it was just very niche. I don't really necessarily know who this game was tailored for. I think, in my opinion, what they were going for was cat lovers, because it's not necessarily deep on the plot. It's not necessarily deep on the gameplay. So for me, it's just like people who love cats and want to have a semi realistic, take on a cat,
Mm.
even though I don't necessarily think that's even realistic for cats. Uh, for me, I'm just kind of like lukewarm on it. It has some like sci-fi elements, but it never goes too deep on them. The platforming isn't necessarily super deep. The combat is not necessarily super deep. It's just kind of a cutesy cat game. If
Yeah.
that's what you're looking for, then have at it. Oh no, get out of here, commercial. But yeah, like it just didn't do a heck of a whole lot for me. The game kind of takes place in this like futuristic sci-fi world where humans are all dead and all there is remaining is just a some cats. That's the thing though, is like finishing this game, you kind of walk away with like, okay, but what else is there? Like you kind of help some robots, and your whole goal is to escape out of this dome
Hmm.
where there's like this encased society where clearly things have gone wrong. Uh there's some like alien
It's like fungus alien thing, right?
fungus thing that somehow may have been the downfall of humans, but you're not sure. I think that is my biggest problem with the game, is ultimately when you finish it, you still aren't quite positive as to what has caused the downfall of humans. Where did they go? Why did
Mm.
they die off? Where did this race come from?
Is
I
this
mean,
one of
maybe
those
it's,
games that like maybe there's more lore stuff kind of hidden throughout and you just overlooked it? Cause
yeah, I mean, because they have like little segments as you go throughout the game. You can uh there's like memory things that you unlock.
Mhm.
That's kind of sprinkled throughout, and I feel like I got like 60, maybe 70% of those.
Okay.
But I mean, maybe there's something that explains it, but
I mean, I haven't
I don't know.
played it, so I have no idea. I think I watched like
Like
one.
if you're seeing there's a thing that says "remember"
Oh, okay,
on
yeah, I see that.
screen, those little things kind of open up some sort of narrative that
Mm.
kind of just the robot like talks to you, of which the robot, from what I understood, was like a human who had moved his consciousness from his body into. It's really, I don't know. I, I didn't really get who this game was for, which is kind of sad.
All right.
It was
Yeah.
a fun game. Oh, sorry, good.
No, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's a fun game. But it's again, the biggest question for me for the game was, who exactly was this for? I don't know.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, I don't have much in the way of experience with the game. I was never really, just by watching the initial trailers, turned on to it too much. I'm kind of the same boat. Like, besides it being a cat game, what else is really, unique to this game that makes it worth playing? Like, replace the cat with any other character, and it's just what looked like an okay platformer. Which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Just didn't overly appeal to me. I do think I watched one lore video when I was kind of browsing through YouTube. And it seemed like they had some interesting things to say. I said, apparently
Sure.
it may not come across when you played it. But I know people were like theory crafting that all the robots are actually their human consciousnesses. Is that what you say that? All kind of
They're the
slotted into the
robots.
robots. Yeah, and they've
Mhm.
just all forgotten that they were even human because they've been that way for so long. Which, I mean,
Yeah.
that's an interesting narrative beat. I mean, I don't know how much they really expound upon him. He said the game's only 5 hours, so I'm imagining it's not anything overly in depth. But
No. Yeah, it's just the game throughout the entire experience. It all builds upon like, it all leads up to you wanting to like get to the outside world and see what's going on. Is there
mhm.
anything happening? And then at the end of the game, it kind of just farts in your face, and you got to sit there, and because you get outside, and then it's like you get outside, and I don't want to ruin it, the total spoiler, but yeah, it's just kind of nothing.
This isn't
The
going to be
game
a
ends.
Returnal situation, right, where you hate the ending, and I send you a video in like 2 days, and like, oh, the ending was amazing. I was wrong. Oh.
Well, I think everyone kind of. I don't know. No, I don't think it's that.
Okay.
I give it an 8. I didn't even just notice that. IGN gave it a great
Mm.
9.
I think everybody was just very hyped on this being a cat game. Like, I don't know, you know the internet. So I think, just it appealed broadly to that cutesy nature and probably felt more different than it actually was. As I said, I didn't play it, so this is completely just superficial, bystander. But every piece of gameplay I've watched, I did watch, some Let's Plays of it, not like full playthroughs, but, I watched some of yours and so a couple other streamers. And it all just looked like standard, navigate around an environment, you jump on some stuff. You do a few cat interactions with knocking crap over, which, okay, that's a cat, but...
That's basically the whole game. It's very basic combat, very basic puzzling. There's some platforming. That's mainly what the game is a lot of platforming sections and some easy puzzles. I didn't really get much out of it. I mean, luckily for the game, it's sub 5 hours, so it's like... if it would have went on much longer, then it would have made that disappointing ending even worse. So I don't know. No hate to this development studio. It was a fun game. Again, I would suggest it for anyone who loves cats and wants some cutesy sections between cats and robots. And I don't know. That was all I got out of it.
Fair enough.
All right, that's all I had.
All right. Oh, I forgot I had a new background for our segment. There it is. I know you can't see it yet, but I got a new background for our What You Playing section with a bunch of game controllers and whoa, because we know what we're doing. So I'll turn it on for my segment because my segment's better anyway.
Everyone loves that segment title, so make it as large as possible on screen.
What You Playing. All right, so the game I played was Roller Drome. Not Roller Drone, Roller Drome. It took me a little bit to catch that. And I remember when I first heard about this game, it was back, I think it won a more recent Sony State of Plays or Indie Showcase or something like that. And initially I saw it and I was like, okay, whatever. And that's kind of where my attitude sat on it till, which video was? I think it was a Skillet review, I'm sure. Which
something about Tony Hawk and Doom.
Yeah, like here's the thing, like I like a lot of Skillup's videos. I'm not that I necessarily agree with every review point that he says. I've definitely disagreed with him before, but I found at least a majority of the time there's some at least similar rationale for why he likes games. So I typically take his review suggestions I'm sorry, as something that is more than likely going to appeal to me in some way, shape, or form. So when he was going through his review, he mentioned this was the most Tony Hawk game he's played since Tony Hawk, which I love Tony Hawk, so that was kind of the first big check for me. And then he said it was mixed with like Doom 2016, which I figured that would be something that probably appeal more to you than anything, but that seemed like a pretty
that was a good game.
that seemed like a pretty powerful combination of genres. And like, you know what, it's like a $20 game right now. I know if you go on Steam, it's $20, and if you have PS Plus, it's $20. So definitely a good price.
It's a $30 game. It just
standard 30, but right now it's on sale. Which I'm gonna recommend if you are interested in this game. 30 is not a bad price, but get it for the 20. Like it's, I think it's probably worth the $20. The 30, I think, is really going to depend on what you're looking for out of this game.
It kind of looks very much like what was that game on the OG Xbox and Dreamcast?
You're thinking of Jet Set Radio.
Jet Set Radio.
It's not like Jet Set. Like the somewhat cel-shaded aesthetic, I think, is what attributes to that, but it really doesn't play anything like Jet Set. I don't know. So I'm trying to think of the best way to kind of phrase this. So his rationale,
from what I'm seeing, is it looks very kind of basic. Like it looks fun, but I mean,
it's more complex than you think. Like, I don't want to downplay this game. Let me say what I like about it. It is definitely, when you figure out the systems, it's a fun, basically, dance of kind of have you move around, select the right weapon, attack certain enemies. So every enemy has to be taken out a certain way. And basically, you have to figure out the best way to approach each enemy. Like, your goal would be to, when you go up to an enemy, you want to kill it, like first try. But the problem is if you don't plan out your pass right, or however you want to phrase it, it's hard to do that. Not every enemy can be taken down with a single pass if you don't use the right combination of environmental hazards or gun types or whatnot. So there's a lot of very last minute or quick second decision making that's taking place throughout that. And when everything kind of clicks together and you're able to kind of flow through the game and choose the right weapon, hit the right point, jump across the right whatever, it does feel really good. And I think that's what Skillup was trying to get at when he was like, this feels like a Tony Hawk game, because I think not most people, but I know his rationale for attributing this to Tony Hawk was it's like coming up with that perfect line. Like, you're going through the game and you're, hitting each what do you want to call it, each trick or each trick obstacle, and everything just connects together and flows to make this perfect seamless kind of run or interaction. And you kind of get that from this game, so I definitely understand his perspective on it. For me, though, like, this game actually has a high level of challenge. Like, it's not a easy game by any means. Like I said, making those quick second decisions and trying to figure out what to do. And this game gets crazy hectic towards some of the later sections. You got like 6 different enemy types and tanks and stuff flying at you. And sometimes you're just jumping around for your life trying to stay alive. And I found that during those moments, I wasn't enjoying myself as much. It felt too tense. But for me, when I think of Tony Hawk, it's not just that making of the perfect line where it's like connect this trick to this trick to this trick. Maybe it's because of the time I played it, but for me, Tony Hawk was this very kind of casual zen-like experience, if that makes sense. Like, kind of chilling out, listening to some 90s, early 2000s pop punk and whatnot, and then just casually jumping around off buildings, making these lines and whatnot. So the casual aspect of it is, I think, what I was missing from it. This game adds just this difficulty level that makes you tense throughout the whole thing. So, I mean, sure, when you find that perfect line, everything clicks and you're on a good run, yeah, I guess I feel that Tony Hawkness to it. But other than that, I was kind of stressed through certain levels of it. I didn't have a terribly difficult time getting through the game. I beat the main campaign. I started the new game plus just kind of get a taste for it. But I don't know, the difficulty, if anything, has turned me off to it. Like, I don't feel like I'm going to come back to this and play it from a casual standpoint. And if that's what you're looking for out of this game, like you're expecting this to be like a casual pick up and play Tony Hawk session, I don't know if everybody's going to get that. It's a solid game. I think maybe my expectations got gauged differently after watching that review. I was expecting more Tony Hawk, and I feel like I got more, I don't even want to say I got more Doom, because besides the very aggressive combat, I'm not sure if I would really attribute this straight to Doom. I don't know.
You mentioned it's a game heavy on the narrative, or is it
no,
it's pretty simple?
There is a narrative. It's one of those, like, after you get past so many levels, it's got a segment where you walk through certain environmental sections and you pick up little story items. Honestly, it's kind of like Returnal in that way. Like, you'd have the house sections periodically where you could go through and there'd be very little story you could be given there, or you could take time and look at all the little papers and books that are floating around and glean little lore and pieces of information from stuff. And that's what this game is like. Less so. It doesn't have a huge narrative by any means, but there's some interesting stuff there about basically corporations running this blood sport and like the politics behind it, and I don't know, kind of, it was interesting, but definitely not the sticking point for this game. So I mean,
sorry, I was looking up this developer, and they have a handful of games, but nothing really notable. I mean, I see Ollie Ollie and Ollie World. Those are the only ones I feel like I've heard of, which I believe those were like skating games too, of some sort.
I know they were really well regarded. And here's the thing, like, this is a good game. Like, from a gameplay perspective, for what you play it as, they set out to make a game, and this turned out being exactly what I'm sure they were wanting to make. It is challenging, and that is not a bad thing by any means. It wasn't, I think, I want to say it wasn't what I was expecting, because I was informed this was a challenging game, but my tone of the game was not set accurately. I was thinking Tony Hawk, and that's not what I got out of this, which is perfectly fine. But this game played really well. Like, once you learn the systems, it does play well. I didn't run into any like glitches or bugs or anything. The art style actually, I think, looks better when you play it in motion than it probably does inside of the trailers. Like, the trailers, I know it probably just looks like, another cel-shaded game, but when you're playing the game, honestly, it helps you kind of parse all the information on the screen, being able to, very clearly and distinguishably seeing, like, how enemies are contrasting from the background, what weapons they're using. Like, the aesthetic does play very well into the gameplay. So, good game. I think maybe if the soundtrack was a little better, I would have liked it. It's kind of like oh man, I'm trying to recall. It's got a little techno-y kind of alternative beat, but it kind of just lulls into the background. I feel
like with a game like this, the soundtrack is pretty important.
It's not bad. It just didn't stand out to me. Like, I can't recall any, like, at least for me, any major tracks that stood out. I'm sure somebody who's played this game is yelling at me saying, no, track 5 on World 3 was amazing. But I don't know. I feel like I should be more positive on this game than I am. But I think I just really set myself with the wrong tone, wrong expectations going into it, which didn't sour me.
Like whoever this is lands a lot of these
tricks. That's the thing. You cannot fall. You land everything. Which, I'll tell you that, I mean, that seems odd, but this game honestly is not about the tricks. the tricks are just kind of there. Like, you could go through the entire game and do no tricks. It's a combat game. That's really what this is. And I think that's once again what kind of threw me off. Like, I knew there was combat in it, but I was expecting more Tony Hawk than Doom, and I got more Doom than Tony Hawk. I think is where my gauge is kind of thrown off here a little bit. My scale leaned the wrong direction. But yeah, you can't bail on any of the tricks. You land everything. But it's really about just figuring out how to move around to kill the enemies in the most efficient way. That's the game. And even then, like, the trick system is not as complex as something like Tony Hawk. Like, it's similar in some ways, but I don't know. You're not going to be pulling off nearly as many interesting combos and tricks as you would in a Tony Hawk game, which is fine.
But it is priced budget wise as well, so it's
and that's what I'm saying. Like, especially if you get it now during this $20 period. This is a great game for $20, and honestly, it's probably a great game for $30. As long as you know what you're getting into, you're gonna have fun with this game. But for me, this didn't hit the Tony Hawk button. I think it did for some of the other reviewers. I mean, if it does for you, great. I mean, people play games for different reasons. Maybe some people want to play Tony Hawk for, that perfect line, high skill level kind of deal. That's never been me with Tony Hawk. I mean, I'm decent at Tony Hawk. My goal is to just chill out, listen to music, skate around to town, do some cool tricks, and that's about it. So, I don't know. Yeah. I'll leave it at that. I'm not even going to give this a score or anything, because honestly, I think it wouldn't do the game justice. Like, my score is going to be based on my feelings, I think, if I say anything right now. But from a technical standpoint, this is a solid game, so I am going to recommend it. Just know what you're getting into.
Yeah. And I will retort, I wasn't necessarily made any more or less interested. I feel like this is one I'm kind of good on. Like, I think it looks fun.
There is a trial on I think if you have PS Premium, I think it's only on the Premium tier or something. It's one of the higher PS Plus tiers. There is like a 2 or 3 hour trial. I would recommend it. So while you got the subscription, download it, try it out for out. You'll know if you like this game after an hour or so. If you don't like it after that first hour or two, you're going to know if you want to put it down. Honestly, I don't think I spent a whole lot of time getting through the game. Maybe 5 hours to get through the campaign. It wasn't that difficult, and there aren't that many levels. There's like 11 or 12, so it's not a huge game either.
Fair enough. All right, guys, so we're going to move on to our first major topic, which technically is going to be 2 little rapid-fire topics. Right?
Is this lightning round? You ready?
Lightning round, yeah.
All right, lightning background. Pacha, lightning background.
Pacha, there you go. All right, so topic numero uno.
Just to prep this, since this is it's a new segment, we got a new thing going on. We have a timer now because Chaz always makes these things run way too long. So there's 2 topics here. Each one we're going to give 5 minutes. Chaz, I guess you can kind of set up the topic, and then once you feel like you've summarized what it's about, I'll click the timer. You can have 2.5 minutes, I'll have 2.5 minutes, then we're done. Then we're moving on. I don't care how much you have to say. We're done.
That's fine. That works. That works with me. I don't think these first 2. I don't have a heck of a whole lot.
You say this kind of every week. I tell you, just every topic, like, I have like nothing to say about that, and then 45 minutes later, we're still chatting about it. So
that's 5 minutes. Years down the line, someone's gonna put a compilation of every time I say this is gonna take that long.
Oh, hopefully that one fan you have.
That one fan, yeah, it'll be me. So as for our first major topic, we're gonna talk about. I don't know if you guys saw, but Disney and Marvel announced that they are officially having their own video game showcase at the D12 conference that they do every year. So I've honestly never watched any of the D12 stuff. I guess right off the bat, have you ever tuned into whatever they do there?
I don't watch them live. I watch.
There was a D23, I think. What is it? D23. I don't know why I said D12.
I don't know.
But yeah, so basically, it's their avenue to talk about games that they're going to be releasing. I was kind of curious as to right off the bat, like, is this like a good or bad thing for any E3 style events? I don't necessarily think that's going to have any effect on those.
I don't know. I'm going to start your timer. Here we go. Okay, 5 minutes starting now. There we go. Sorry.
Oh no, I don't necessarily think this is going to affect. I mean, they don't really have that many games. I hate to say it. There's nothing crazy as of late. I mean, maybe
more than you think. Because here's the thing:
Guardians of the Galaxy in years past probably would show up to something like this, and
They have, I mean, if we're talking about things in development, they have several Star Wars titles. They have several Marvel titles, like, and well, they have that Disney. Oh, I don't know the name of it. It's like Disney Sim
Well,
something.
yeah, right off the bat, I have a little list here of known games that are coming to release. I've got Marvel Midnight Suns, which, I don't know if you know, but that
Got
game
delayed.
recently
Yeah.
got pushed back. So that's pushed back. The one you're thinking about is called Dreamlight Valley,
Mm.
which is it's like a Sims or Animal Crossing like game. Then we got a company named Skydance Studios with their unannounced Marvel game that they have not put a name on yet. We've got Knights of the Old Republic remake, which just got delayed as well. And then we have the announced Wolverine game that yet has had an official title and an official date.
I think I just saw that
So
Knights of the Old Republic remake too. Some article popped up a moment ago.
mhm,
Said like their developers been
they
switched and
just switched. Yeah, I
yeah,
saw that.
games may not be coming out. But anyways,
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to. I don't even know what to like really add. It's kind of neat. I'm not necessarily all that intrigued by it because I haven't tuned into the D23 stuff before, anyways. I don't know if this is quite interesting
I
enough to
feel
draw me in.
I don't know. I mean, here's the thing I'm more curious about. So I know they're gonna talk some Star Wars stuff. I'm curious how many of the like PlayStation, Insomniac, Marvel games, if any, they'll discuss here. 'Cause you have the Wolverine game, which I'm pretty sure that was also done by Insomniac, unless I'm really missing the boat. And then you have the Spider-Man games, or
Actually,
Spider-Man
have
2
that
in
in the
particular.
questions too. Here,
I
I
mean,
was gonna say
that
any
would
Spider-Man
be
news.
the biggest profile thing. I'd be curious to see if they put anything about, but I don't know if they will. Like Sony, for those big major IPs, usually like to keep those kind of close to the chest and have some of their own control over when they show it and whatnot. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure if they're looking at it as this is not the best place to be Sony centric kind of thing. It's because it's a more generalized Disney presentation, but. I don't know. Those are the games I most care to see. I know there's also the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order 2, whatever that was called. It's a different
Mhm.
name, like Jedi Survivor or something. But
I'll be curious to see because I know most of the people that show up to the D23 are mainly looking for like, well, I don't want to say mainly, but it feels like a lot of it is the Star Wars like movies, TV show people.
yeah.
I feel like those are the things that always get the most hubbub at this event. So
Well, I
I'm
haven't
curious
watched
to
many in the
see.
past. I feel like they've also done, some MCU stuff. Like Disney's such a big company now; they can throw whatever they want to in here. So I mean, it's a large enough event that has enough, franchises to discuss. I don't think that's ever been the issue. I think just thinking of them as thinking of Disney as a game company now to have games to show is maybe an odder perspective to look at them as, but they honestly have their hands in several major games now between their Star Wars IPs and the Marvel ones. So I don't know.
Well, they need to prioritize putting out good ones. I mean, what I'm trying to think of what good. I mean, I know a lot of people are hyped for what is it? I don't even know what it's called now. Jedi Fallen. What is it?
I
It's
thought it was
like
like Jedi
Jedi
Survivor or
Survivor.
something.
There you go. I know that's kind of in the waiting in the background. I don't know.
I
I
would
still don't think
like.
that is a date.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think it does either. Neither does I think this Spider-Man or Wolverine. I honestly, out of all that, I'd want to see the Wolverine game. I'm very curious how they're going to set up that game. Like the
Same boat.
last,
Yeah.
the last Wolverine game I played that I enjoyed. Do you remember X-Men Origins? Terrible
Mhm.
movie, but the game was pretty good.
The game was great. Yeah,
Yeah.
360.
Like I can't imagine they're going to go that route where they have like just level based story missions. So what would you want out of a Wolverine game? And there's 40 seconds left, by the way.
What I want out of a Wolverine game,
Mm-hmm.
I
Big
guess, like
question.
you said, a good comparison would be more of something like Wolverine Origins,
You'd want more
like
like that though, like the story
more like more
missions.
brute. Well, just in terms of like thematically, like more brutal stuff. Like that game was pretty bad. Like you would dismantle people, but
I guess I'm
I
thinking
don't know.
more story structure. Should it, in your opinion,
Oh, I
should
see.
it lean like Guardians of the Galaxy style game, or should it lean like Spider-Man game where it's open world kind of stuff? 10 seconds.
Oh man, I would say probably Spider-Man is what I
Really?
would rather see. Yeah.
Okay. That's the timer right there. Um, just I would think Guardians. I don't think
Really?
Wolverine's going to translate well to open world, but I could be
Fair
wrong.
enough.
All right, that was it. That was topic number one. I don't care what
wanna
you have to
throw
say.
One
No,
more thing
no.
on there.
All right, fine. One
Ultimate
more.
Alliance remake or some sort of Ultimate Alliance sequel.
We just had three. like not that long ago.
Oh, I forgot about that game. Oh wow, I never got to play it. I gotta go get that so I can
It
play it.
was just fine. I don't know. I don't think any of them has been as good as the first one, but either way, 5 minutes
Mm.
is over. We're moving on. I'm resetting the timer. All right, go ahead
See,
and
he's
set up
he's doing
topic
he's doing a
two.
much better job than me of pushing on. I'm too nice. I'm too nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so our second rapid fire little topic here is we're gonna recently in there were let's see, oh, the Sony PC launcher. So recently in what was it? I'm trying to remember. Oh, recently in the recently released PC version of
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man, re- reports of references have been found, files have been found in the game, uh, kind of just referencing to some sort of PC, Sony PC launcher. Um, I don't know how exactly do people find stuff like that? That feels like that's a question more for you.
Dig into the
Like
code, like
just into the
when,
code.
yeah, when I guess I'll
And
start
why
the
do people
timer
go
now.
through that for modding and stuff?
Could be that. A lot of them also want a data mine to find like. Here's the thing: when you have a game like that that has all these systems built in, usually they have some stuff built in for like future content and future stuff. So by going and digging through the code and the assets and all of that, you usually find little clues and hints towards maybe like upcoming DLC or stuff like this. There's a launcher that's going to be tied to it. Like they usually a game if it has any future updates or whatnot, usually there's little trails of it if you kind of dig into the data for it. So that's part of what happened. You had a data miner go through. That's how I used to find all the Destiny stuff. They would dig through the newest update, pull the data apart, and see references to new weapons and whatnot. So same thing here.
Yeah, and basically it makes a heck of a whole lot of sense. Sony moving in this sort of direction. It kind of feels like every major company is trying to do it's the whole like walled garden type thing of making you have to go through them
Yeah,
or
they don't want to give
to
Steam money. I mean,
yeah,
that's how Microsoft was too. But I think that's an interesting comparison.
and
So
Epic. Yeah.
But I think that's interesting because, like, so Sony is clearly wanting to get on their platform so they can have control over, all the profits. But Microsoft really tried hard for that with most of their PC games. They wanted it all to be on the
Was it
Microsoft Store.
Windows? What was it
Oh,
called?
you're going back
Windows.
way, the games for Windows, but even
Games for
recently,
Windows.
they've wanted most of their games on the Windows Store. And we've just now started seeing Microsoft bring stuff over to Steam. Like Halo. Isn't Halo
Mm,
on Steam?
believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm wrong, I'm going to be bashed in a comment from your one fan. But I find it kind of interesting. They're now taking kind of the opposite approach of Sony. Like, they started with their own kind of in-house launcher, and then like, forget this. We're going to go ahead and reach the broader market and hit Steam. Like, Steam's going to have more users. Although I personally don't find it a big deal to have multiple PC launchers. I mean, it's an inconvenience, but there's no cost associated with it to me. So I don't care if I have to click on the Epic app or the Steam app or the Microsoft app. But even with that, a lot of gamers do care about that. They don't want to have 5 different launchers. They want to have one, preferably, or two. And sometimes they will, stand on their pride and not download other launchers. So Steam is the biggest user base for a reason. A lot of people want to stay there. So
Could it be that just Microsoft is rather than they're less interested in getting that direct profit up front from having that walled garden, and they're more interested in just like maintaining a strong relationship with companies like Steam and Epic, and
I don't think it's that.
you don't think it's
No,
that?
I think, and also too, I
It's
haven't
in their
looked at
best
all.
interest. It's in their best interest though to maintain a strong. I mean,
I think that could be debatable. I think probably their plan. I haven't looked at all the games that they've released on Steam, but like with Halo, they've set up Halo differently. Halo's not a game that you buy once and you're done with it. It's technically for them a microtransaction live service kind of game. So yeah, they may not get as much off the initial profit, like if they let Steam go ahead and sell it, but they will still make a lot of money off that long term for people continually using it. So for a game like that, I think their major goal is to expand the player base, right? So putting on Steam is ultimately a benefit. Now, will they do that for the next Gears of War if it's not set up with like a microtransaction, season pass kind of thing? Maybe not. I don't think Microsoft has all of their games on Steam. It's just been a select few.
and pretty much this discovery kind of follows shortly behind a report of a similar finding indicating that Sony could be preparing to let PC gamers link PlayStation Network accounts to its games with in-game bonuses and offer those who do so. Currently released Sony first-party PC titles. So far, what they have is they've got Marvel Spider-Man, which just recently released. Then, of course, they got God of War, Predator Hunting Grounds, Days Gone, and Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition.
Yeah.
So not a heck of a whole lot so far, but hey, once again,
What I'm curious about, like, do they really need their own launcher to have, like, the accounts, like, gamer tags switch over? Like, and I'm at a loss here because I haven't played the Halo launch on Steam, but do you still link that to your Microsoft account at all, or is it all done through a Steam account?
that's an excellent question. That's a question more tailored for
I'm just curious.
someone
We'd
who
have to look it up. And
yeah.
I would feel like you'd need to, but I could be wrong. And assuming that's the case, if you do use your Microsoft account through your Steam version of Halo,
Mhm.
PlayStation should be able to do the same thing with PSN in a roundabout way. What I'm more interested is, I think I read this somewhere, not that they were doing it, but as a possibility, if you can cross-buy your game. So if I buy my game on the PC launcher, I now own it on the PlayStation ecosystem, period. And I can go play it on my PlayStation, my PC, whatever. Kind of how Xbox does theirs. That, I think, would be worth it. And we're out of time. Last
No,
minute.
that works. That's perfect. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to our second major topic.
No more
Now,
lightning
this
round.
is no more lightning round. That's
Tell
that's,
us how
that's
you like the lightning round if everybody's watching this. Was that better, worse? Do you like not listening
better,
to
worse.
us as long? So
I think people will very much like us putting the time limit on that.
all right.
So, major topic number 2, we're going to move on to recently the Embracer Group, that major conglomerate video game company that bought out, what was it? They bought out
Everybody.
not Square Enix earlier this year. Who was it? They bought out
Were they the ones who bought
Eidos.
out? Yeah,
Eidos
Eidos Montreal. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically they have moved on.
Didn't they get, what was it, Tomb Raider and Deus Ex? Were those the big
I
ones?
believe so, and Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I think the only thing they didn't get in that deal was Hitman, because Hitman is like a different leg of Eidos, which you could argue that's one of the larger ones. But so I'm gonna be honest, this is the one I don't have any. I gotta find the notes. So basically, I guess we'll just kind of wing it. I mean, I know in this deal they get what they get the video game publishing rights to the Lord of the Rings series.
Well, it's more than just video game rights. They, to my
just the video game rights.
To my understanding, unless I'm really missing something here, they bought out, like, so you had, I don't remember the name of the entity that owned this, but you had an entity that owned the rights to Lord of the Rings, all the Tolkien works, essentially. And for the past, however many decades now, when people have utilized Tolkien works, they've licensed them or licensed them from this group, this entity, which I can't remember the name, and I'm sorry. And like when Peter Jackson did his trilogy and beyond,
the Saul Zaentz company.
I think that's it. They would license it from them. I think the exception to that, there was some kind of loophole with the new Amazon show that didn't require them to license it.
Yeah.
So they didn't just buy the game rights; they bought that group. So they own now all the rights to all of Tolkien's works. So that means anything that's been under that. And that's the cool thing about this, or it might not cool thing, interesting thing about it. It's not like now they have to go rebuild these partnerships. Like they bought that head unit, so all the partnerships they already had licensing agreements with, like Warner Brothers to release a lot of the movies, and Amazon with this show, or whatever it may be, they now just own it. They don't have to worry even about figuring out all the details. They get the brunt of it at the end of it. So that means games, any kind of arm that's dealing with the video game development with that license, they now have the rights to that. The TV show, the movies, just to my knowledge, pretty much everything Tolkien related.
Interesting. That's probably that may spell good for the video game side of Lord of the Rings, because the Middle Earth stuff in general, because it hasn't really been spectacular as of late. I know some people are like, it seems like people are very wishy-washy as to whether they liked the Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor series. I, for one, wasn't crazy for that first game. I never got to play the second one. Other games, I know Gollum. I don't know if Gollum
that's
technically
still coming out, isn't it?
next year sometime. But yeah, there's not really a heck of a whole lot for them to build upon right now. I mean, maybe that's good, because they can kind of step in and like clean slate it and just start from ground zero. What do we have? What do we need to start working on?
Well, for a long time, like most of the Tolkien franchises kind of taken a lull over the past 5-6 years or so. I don't know when the last Hobbit movie even ended at this point, but it's been a hot minute. Besides this Amazon show, it just hasn't been in the, the general kind of hot topic kind of wheelhouse that's out there. So, I guess there hasn't really been as much of a need for a game. And I say that's an odd thing, 'cause you don't have to, have a movie or something else out there to make a game about anything from Tolkien's universe. But that always seemed like when they would do it, right? You have a big movie coming out, so they're going to capitalize on it with some spin-off game, whatever it may be. So I think because there hasn't been any real push from the main portion of the franchise with movies, TVs, whatever, games have kind of just been a little on the back burner, barring that Golem game. But that might change now that the show's coming back. It feels like they're trying to make a resurgence with the franchises. So I don't know. I think I'm curious. So you say it might be a good thing. I haven't really been paying attention to what Embracer Group has now really done with all these acquisitions. Yeah, I know they've owned a lot of companies now for a while. I don't even know their whole list now of things that they own or companies they own. But I don't know if I've seen a whole lot of fruit from them yet, right? So they bought out Eidos Montreal. I know that's a pretty recent purchase, but we don't know what that's going to mean yet. Everybody's hopeful. Oh, that's great. Now we might see a Guardians 2. We don't know that yet. There's no guarantee we're going to get that. So they bought out all these rights to The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. That doesn't mean we're going to all of a sudden get some great Lord of the Rings game made by some of these developers. You would hope so, because they have all these great developers under their umbrella now, but I don't know. I think it's still a big question mark. And I'd have to go back and see from the people they currently own and what they're putting out, how well that's really panning out for them. I don't know if you have any information on that or read anything about that. Or
No, I was just real quick while you were talking. I just was looking at some of the other acquisitions they had gotten, but
who's under them, period? Not even just recent acquisitions. I'm trying to think of companies that have been under them long term that we would have already seen some games come from.
From what I remember off the top of my head, they initially were a video game company. They were a major developer that kind of switched names. I'm trying to remember what.
Nordic.
They were Nordic, yes. So they were already a game developer.
They bought Coffee Stain Studios.
And I'm trying to, let me look up what games exactly.
Wasn't Coffee Stain the one who did Goat Simulator? I think so.
I believe so, yes, because they do own that IP. Swedish
Dark
video
Horse.
game.
Oh, do they own Dark Horse Media?
Yes, they do.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
They own a lot. They actually own
Gearbox, Saber. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, some of the other stuff that they got. I mean, I'm sure. I'm not quite sure how popular people are with limited run games. I know they're kind of a niche company, more particularly, swayed towards people like us, collectors. But even someone like me, I don't buy from limited run all that often.
I don't know if we were clear. They bought limited run.
Yes, they bought limited run
as well as a handful of other actual developers, like Tripwire and who else?
Tripwire, some other PC company. If you don't know Tripwire, they're more known for the Killing Floor series.
Maneater.
Maneater they developed. There was some other stuff. Oh, I saw the I can't remember off the top of my head. Doing a bad job of keeping notes.
Sorry, why I sidetracked you. But the limited run stuff is interesting. Because that's a very different type of publishing house.
I was gonna say I'd love to see how like beneficial it is for them to buy something like limited run.
Well, it
games.
must mean that limited run is relatively profitable right now. And here's the thing: game collecting is still at, I think, an all-time high. I don't think it's really dipped too much yet. I mean, it might in upcoming years, but limited run sales are pretty high right now. So I would imagine. I
haven't even gotten my freaking Ninja Turtle game yet.
Well, that's not even been published yet, like the physicals.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think so. Oh, I'm still waiting on my
$60 version.
I'm waiting on my vinyl for the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack. That still hasn't come in.
You still haven't gotten that?
Nope. So.
Yikes.
Yeah, and that's the dark side of limited run. You order stuff from them, depending what it is, you might not see it for years. But that's another thing. But I know they're profitable, so they clearly saw that and were like, "Hey, let's go ahead and give that a shot." My feelings on limited run have been shifting a little bit. I'm still a sucker for some of their collector's editions, but the whole point of limited run initially was, what's their catchphrase? Forever physical. So then, if you could pick up one of their games that they published 20, 30, 40 years from now, put it in the system it was made for, and just play it. No need for internet downloads, whatever. They've started to slip on that. I don't remember what game it was. I think it might have been like the Doom collection or something they put out for the Switch. I guess for you to even play it, you had to have a Bethesda account, which right off the bat means for you to ever play this, you've got to have the internet. I think they tried to fix it, but it's like I'm getting on a sidetrack here with Limited Run in particular. But anyways, I think for Embracer, it was probably a profitable company at the time as a game collection or game collecting is hot. So why not?
No, they definitely been on a spending spree, man. I actually didn't even. Oh, I just thought about it. I didn't even look up how much they spent for the Lord of the Rings and all of that stuff.
I'd imagine it'd have to be quite a bit. Otherwise, somebody else probably would have done it a long time ago. Surprised WB had never tried because they made so much with the movies. Maybe they have in the past. I don't know.
Well, because I remember a major talking point with the Eidos Montreal purchase was how cheap it was for them. I remember they got that entire studio for like 200 million, which a lot of people were like,
I think that was
dang.
Square though. Like Square, I think is trying to cut corners. Not cut corners. I'm sorry. Clean house a little bit. The big theory is that they're going to want to sell pretty soon. And a lot of people are thinking, oh, Sony's going to snatch up Square Enix. So they're probably trying to drop franchises that are not profitable, so that makes them look more appealing to sell off at some point. So that might be why they got such a good deal for those franchises in particular. I don't necessarily think that's the case for the Lord of the Rings stuff, because I don't think people look at those as low profit franchises by any means. I know Amazon doesn't. They just made the most expensive TV show ever based upon it. So
I remember a lot of people. Well, actually, it's all coming back to me. I remember the Embracer or the Square, the Eidos Montreal, or a lot of people were mad because Square just after that selling that for the 200 million, they said they were going to convert that 200 million into some sort of
NFT something, right?
NFT, yeah. Bitcoin, some sort. So a lot of people were like, "So you sell like some like hard hitting game franchises for some possible revenue down the line?" It's like,
but they're businesses. Like, I think sometimes people forget that, especially when you think about these classic gaming companies that used to be a lot smaller, probably were more focused on just making games, but now these are major companies. They're not just these tiny little game studios. And they have bottom lines and shareholders and all that. So, I mean, I'm not saying I agree with their trend chasing of trying to get into the NFT market by any means. Like, I think that's a poor avenue to go down, but I'm also not surprised by it. It's just, I don't know. It's a business. It's a company.
I'm having trouble finding how much they spent exactly for all of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I guess the bottom line with this
probably
is
not important, but
is this good? Do you like it? I mean, this goes back. We've had this conversation with other acquisitions. Microsoft buying everybody, Sony buying everybody, Embracer buying everybody. Like, what do we think about this dystopia we're going in, where there's only going to be two companies at the end? One's Disney and one's Sony, Nintendo, all just fused together.
I mean, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do for, growing companies and monopolies. I mean, it's the way our capitalistic society works. Unfortunately, there will be certain ones that rise above the rest. I mean, all you can hope for is that the structures that we have can find a way to maintain things. But I have no hope for that.
No.
I mean, all you have to hope. The only thing you can hope for is that the companies that do own them continue to, I don't know, do the best with the studios that they have and prioritize making a good product, and hopefully treating their employees well. And
here's the fear, though.
Like
I mean, as far as treating employees well, that's a whole other thing. But as far as focusing on the product, although you'd hope that's what companies do, as I said, I am under no disillusion that companies aren't here to make money. And the reason right now, I think a lot of people are looking relatively favorably on companies like Microsoft. Not that they are, scrutinizing them for buying, Bethesda and Activision, all that. But I think Uncle Phil has done some good, what's a good way to say this, self-image uplifting over the past few years. So they come across as a good guy, I think, in some cases. Here's the thing, though. I think the only reason it feels that way right now is they have competition to kind of push back against. Like, they're pushing out Game Pass so they can kind of, butt up against Sony and make them look bad. But imagine in a world where Sony wasn't there. What if Microsoft somehow was successful and just plain bought everybody? They own Sony, they bought Embracer, they bought Nintendo.
They bought the ChatZman podcast.
Oh, yeah, well, that'll be cheap. Do you think they're really going to be so consumer friendly if they are the last shop you can go to?
Nope.
Yeah, so I think that's the fear everybody's at. Like, I think that's kind of the thing about capitalism too. Like, capitalism, we're in a weird situation with it where they have such large organizations making so much, and they are all monopolizing. But what makes that system work at all is when you have strong free market competition. And I think as we lose that competition, we're going to see the worst sides of capitalism over time. Not that we aren't there already, but again, that's my fear. I am not necessarily opposed to Embracer Group specifically buying these IPs. Maybe that would be great for the gamers. We'll get some cool games out of them. Maybe
in actuality, it may be good that a company like Embracer Group pops up because they pop up to combat or to go to war with Xbox.
Well, I'm not saying that's the case. I mean, I'm saying I don't have anything personally against Embracer themselves buying this, but I think the general trend of everybody buying everybody at some point is going to probably bite us in the butt. Like, if we end up having just 2 or 3 major owners of everything.
Well, I'm not saying I back it. I'm just saying, but to combat a major company like Microsoft or Apple or something, I mean, another company rising up to the top maybe isn't a bad, or
more competition. Like, I don't know how well Embracer size-wise matches up to someone like Microsoft or Sony.
It makes less competition in the free market, like you were saying, but it makes more competition up at the top.
Yeah.
So is that a good or bad thing? Who knows?
More competition is always better. Like, for consumers. Like, I won't go into too much detail. I was going to say something from a personal story, but in general, just when you can, having more competition, always better for consumer. You have more options. There's more to vie for, etc.
It's even good, maybe good for like developers and ground workers. People. If it's good because you can compare, offers from Embracer versus offers from Microsoft and Apple. I mean. I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking positively on this.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, you were right in one sense, though. There's nothing we can do about it.
No,
so, I mean, all this, I think, kind of theory crafting over if this is good or bad, or analyzing the future of all this capitalistic monopoly, like, whatever. I think that's kind of where I got with it. I've become so numb to it, which maybe that's not the right place to be. I don't know, but
I've come to the point of years ago when I used to like very much think of you speak with your money. You let your money, your purchases dictate how you want to control things, and it's like maybe to an extent, but these
the
companies
core of that is true. But the problem is these companies are so big. And their market is so big. Like, you might be able to put up a stance, be like, okay, I'm going to speak with my wallet. And maybe you convince 5 of your closest friends to do it. Maybe they convince 5 of their friends to do it. But at the end of the day, you've maybe convinced 100 people. Okay?
Yes.
They have millions of people. So it's just a drop in the bucket for most of it. So unless you can make some wide scale, even like when they do have like big controversies about certain things, and like I'm trying to think of a recent one.
I was gonna say in my head, I was people that were upset about all of the crazy stuff that's been going on with Activision Blizzard.
Yeah,
and
most people don't care or know. That's the thing. Like, we as gamers know.
And even the people that are like, I'm not gonna buy the new Diablo game because of that. It's like, okay, well, they just got bought by Microsoft, so now that whole company should be. They're still in a position where they can continue to make games.
But even if they didn't, like, you're right, that's a good example. Like, Blizzard, or Activision Blizzard in particular, has been a terrible company for many, many reasons over the past, decades. But most people in the general, ecosphere are not going to care. They're going to say, ooh, new Diablo, buy. They're not going to look into the politics. They're
I'm
not
in
going to look
that
into the
boat. I'm
country.
excited for Diablo 4, and
And
it's
you
like,
know about all the issues, and you're still going to
yes,
support
and
it.
I know, it's bad.
But just think about that, like the group or the percentage of people that stay up to date with this kind of stuff and know every issue and why we shouldn't be supporting them with money, even if we all spoke with our wallets, it's not going to matter. And I know somebody out there is going to yell at me like, that's the wrong way to think of it. You should still stand on your moral high ground. And that's fine. I mean, you still should if that's where you feel like your principles are at. But I don't think ultimately it's going to change anything. Maybe I'm jaded, but these companies are going to grow, and unless like there's a major thing that prevents them from doing business, they're going to keep doing that business, and most people aren't going
I
to care.
agree. I agree. Ultimately, if you're excited for Diablo 4, man, go buy it. Because
I'm not
there's
saying
nothing.
that. I'm not saying that.
There's yeah,
Here's the
but
thing. No,
Bobby Kotick's gonna get paid out the behind
okay.
regardless.
I want to rephrase this because I do think if you have personal moral principles about how these companies are behaving, you should not support. I am very much a proponent for standing up and not supporting individuals, companies, whatever, for how they utilize your support through your financial givings or purchases. However, I don't think you should be disillusioned to think that that's going to stop them. That's all I'm
Yes.
saying. Like, now, if you want to play Diablo and that's your choice, by all means. So I'm not saying you should throw out your moral standings or how you feel about a certain game. Just forget that. Just go buy the game. You're gonna have fun. Like, I don't think we should promote that necessarily. I just don't think you should assume that by you standing on your moral high ground, you're gonna stop these major companies. I think it's just the fact of where we are in today's, capitalistic society. But as I said, maybe I am jaded or misinterpreting things, but that's where I'm at.
I don't think you're jaded. It's just it's tough. It's tough to like. Like you were saying. It's like you either stick with your morals or do you want to enjoy the things that you enjoy, and it is a very slippery slope of
Well, that's life in general. I know it's getting a little
yeah.
too broad, but here's the thing. The world and the way systems work are not in your favor. There are going to be people that are going to profit off of other people's suffering or whatever it may be, workplace abuse, what have you. That's going to happen, I think, no matter what we do without major, like, changes to systems, which I'm not getting into any of that. And I think you should...
Sorry, I don't.
No, no, I'm
I was gonna say,
blabbering at this point. I'm sorry.
to be fair, at least nowadays with the advent of social media, people to an extent do have a voice and can make subtle differences. At
For better or
least
for worse.
for
Like,
better or for worse. Like I'm not saying every opinion out there should be known, but at least to an extent. I remember when the whole Activision Blizzard thing did happen, the outcry was so loud and so boisterous that I remember their stock prices did take a dip, and that's I think what ultimately pushed them in the direction of looking at Microsoft. But again, they still probably will end up on their feet. But they did initially take a bit of brunt, from a lot of the outcry. So you can make a difference, but I think it all depends on certain situations. I don't know.
nah. I think we should move on. I think I'm just gonna rant around a circle, and I apologize if I'm driving anybody crazy. I don't know.
No, it's fine.
It's a depressing world. So,
No.
all right, let's move into something fun. Let's talk trash about something.
Okay. You want to talk trash? Or you want to talk good? I thought you wanted to switch the
Oh,
last two topics.
up to you. I'll leave it up to you. We have two more topics, so you can choose which route you want to go.
All right. So, you know what? Let's keep everything. Let's finish it out on a negative on a negative note.
Okay.
We'll move on to The Boys season 3. So I finally got to watch it and got caught up with everybody. Man, this show just continues to be crazy. I guess right off the bat, something I did want to throw out is, I guess now would be a good time since I'm caught up to kind of rank seasons, 1 through 3, and I'm kind of different. I've a lot of people from what I've heard from friends, and I think your opinion is that a lot of people have liked season 3 the most. Although I remember you said you liked 1 a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if people like 3 the most. I mean, it's done well critically. I don't know if I have my thumb on the pulse enough to say that, 3 as being just more generally accepted as the better season. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll actually say in my opinion, I feel like for me, if I were to rank them, it would be season 2 is the one I like the most, then season 1, then season 3. So I would definitely say for me, this is probably my lesser favorite of the three, but in my opinion, this season is still like top tier television at
All
the moment. It's
3 are
still
good. Like,
all of them are great. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, if you're looking for a quality show, I think consistently this show holds up. I have a hard time, I think, really ranking them, especially 1 and 2. I think I watched 1 and I finished it right before 2 came out, so I kind of flowed right between them, which I know is kind of what you did. But for me, that makes it hard to distinguish them. Like 1 and 2 just kind of become this big season because I watched them pretty much just all at once.
I watched all three of them back to back to back. So
1 I think stands out the most to me just because, it came out of nowhere. I had no idea what to expect, so when some of the craziness happened, it caught me off guard. I'm like, oh, it left a bigger impact. 2, a little less so for me, I think, as far as the big impact it had. There were some crazy moments, but 3, for me, felt like the shock and awe season. I don't know about you, and I really don't want to get into some of the really weird, gross stuff if we can avoid.
I want to get into the really weird, gross
I don't
stuff.
Honestly, I don't think I can talk about it. I just, my heart won't let me.
You didn't like Termite? Come on, Termite was great.
Oh man, that first episode was probably one of the most disturbing things I think I had seen in
Did
maybe any media.
Did you see the behind the scenes of how they recorded that scene?
No, I don't know if I want to.
the let's just say the thing he runs into to actually record it, they had him, the actor, running on almost a green screen, and he actually ran into a giant that was actually built when he's like running from the back.
And
it's so crazy.
Yeah. So for me, those big shock and awe moments stand out. And the one particular episode that kind of builds upon that same theming, I don't know, caught me off guard quite a bit. I liked
talking about what was it, the hero-gasm?
Yeah. I said I can't go into detail on it. Don't make me do it, Chaz.
You don't have to.
I'll say though, overall, I think I liked the plot of this. I like flashbacky seasons, I found. So I liked seeing the Soldier Boy stuff.
Soldier Boy.
And
Chris
I like
Evans, basically.
Yeah, I liked I like this when this show tries to do the satire of traditional comic book heroes. I like that. So I like seeing their comparison. Like Homelander is their version of Superman, essentially, how messed up he is. So seeing their version of what is essentially Captain America, I thought was pretty fun.
Wonder Woman.
Huh?
Man, Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
All of the basic, Flash.
Yeah. So I find that fun. I liked the Black Noir stuff. I am disappointed how easily and abruptly it ended.
Because they actually built him up a lot in this season. They make him like he's very much like a sympathetic character. It feels like there's going to be this big, huge climactic battle between him and Soldier Boy at the end, and he kind of just gets
off. Yeah.
Destroyed. I'm kind of curious as to in future if they're going to leave him dead, because he's lived through some like very traumatic stuff. I mean, how he was like destroyed by Soldier Boy.
Head was like blasted open. Yeah.
I mean, he somehow survived a nut allergy reaction in a coma. Yeah, I think he said he was in a coma because of that. So I have a
feeling they're going to leave him dead. I mean, I know they don't have to. It's a comic book show, so they can do whatever they want. I feel like, and I haven't read the comics, but I have watched like some comparisons, what they've changed, what they haven't. I don't think Black Noir was supposed to die there, like in the comics. I think he goes on longer in the narrative. So
I would be totally okay if they kind of just fashion him in the vein of Deadpool, which it kind of seems like he kind of almost is, with the suit and.
He's got some regenerative capabilities.
Yeah.
I just remembered all his weird cartoon flashbacks.
Stuff I loved.
Yeah. Oh, that was messed up.
I absolutely loved the narrative decision of using something to kind of help him deal with the
How
problems
cope
that he
with it.
has.
Yeah.
That's his way of coping, is to like
And
imagine
the
these
way those little
cartoon
animated characters acted out the scenes was really good.
It was so sad when he dies, and the characters are like,
It's okay.
"Don't worry, it's okay. You're you're going to heaven now," and it's just like, whoa.
Yeah, no, that was a very boys moment. So,
Yeah.
um, I don't think anything else. I'll tell you, some characters I'm getting tired of. Starlight, I don't know. I feel like she's serving the exact
Yeah.
same role. Like there are some characters that I think right now are stuck in a weird spot where they're not really evolving too much. Like
I'll be honest, I didn't really like Huey
I
in this
didn't like
last
Huey
season.
either. Like Huey's done that, back and forth thing the whole show. Like he's like
Hmm.
he's in, he's out, he's in, he's out. And I think there was just still too much of that in this season. I felt like at the end of season 2 was about as much stomach as I had for that kind of behavioral shift, and it seemed like he was sticking to something at that point. But now he started going back and forth again. The way he
Hmm.
even treats Starlight in it, which I think is kind of crappy. Like I think is supposed to, maybe I'm missing this. He's supposed to serve as kind of the audience moral perspective, but I don't feel like I agree with his perspective most of the time. So maybe I'm
Hmm.
just missing it. And they're trying to build him in a different direction, but I don't know. I'm kind of over him, and Starlight just kind of she feels the same to me. So I'm ready for her to do something different.
I I do ultimately feel like that's, to me, is what makes this season lesser than the previous two, is that I feel like, in my opinion, this is probably the most tropey of the three seasons. There are some plot elements that are like, they're kind of things that you would expect that a show like this would do. Now again, I will say, in my opinion, all of that stuff that I'm talking about solely revolves around, in my opinion, the Butcher and Huey kind of plot of, them getting addicted to the compound V serum, and a lot of their decisions that they start to make after that addiction type stuff is just
Yeah,
kind of like, it's
I
like
feel like
typical like power hungry type things.
I feel like Huey's starting not to serve a point either. Like I haven't watched the first 2 seasons in a while, but I feel like he had more agency and more of a reason to be involved. But this season, I'm trying to think what he really brought to the table besides maybe some contrived reasons for him to be around, and just to have some conflict with him and Butcher and Starlight.
If you think about it, where he starts off at the beginning of this season is exactly where he's at the end. I mean, he comes off of the high of the drug, and
Mm.
he's back because the whole point of this season between him and Butcher is that he finally agrees with Butcher that Butcher's way of doing things is the wrong way, but it's
The
the way to get
necessary
things
way.
done, the necessary way.
I guess he's
And
supposed to be the thing that grounds Butcher a little bit, but I don't know if I don't know the way Butcher views Huey, or at least has interacted with him the past season. I'm not feeling that connection anymore. Like I don't know.
Mhm. and ultimately, like, they do certain things where it's just like, dude, you've seen at this point, like they hit you over the head with the whole idea that everyone Butcher ever gets close with or any stuff like that, he ends up ultimately hurting, and it's like, yeah, that is the truth.
Mm.
Basically, anyone who he gets close with, or he decides to work with, he eventually will begin to use them, and it's just like,
Yeah,
he gets things done, but he destroys everything he touches in the meantime,
yeah.
and
I guess
you
sometimes
know,
I have a hard time understanding. Like, I mean, I get that's his character, but when he makes certain decisions that lead to moments like that, I don't know if I really agree with how that character acted. Like when he what's the son's name? Homelander's son,
Ryan,
Ryan. Like when he flipped out at Ryan and basically said, "I don't
it
care about
felt
you."
totally
That felt
like
out of place. Like
it did.
I understand what you're saying. Like yeah, anybody he's close to, and I understand why he was doing that. I was supposed to protect him by distancing him, but
But it's like, dude, this kid is possibly the next strongest
yeah,
hero in
just
the
in the context of
universe.
what was going on, I feel because it seems like he cares for this kid at some level,
Hmm.
and I feel like that's not I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading the character differently. I don't feel like that was the right character action for that. Which I know
I
why
agree.
they did it. They wanted to push Ryan back towards Homelander so they could set up what's coming. It just I don't know. Maybe it's the way that Butcher's being portrayed. I don't know. But either way.
And they almost did it again because there's a scene where Starlight finds out the ramifications of taking the compound V, and so I thought they were gonna like go through with it where she tells it to Butcher, and then Butcher never relays the
Doesn't tell him.
information to Huey, and I'm like seriously? So Butcher now knows that if Huey takes it again, that this could compromise both of them and kill them, and luckily, I guess Butcher does the right thing and it leaves Huey behind, but it's like they almost like, made Butcher the bad guy again, who
Well, I guess that's my point. Like, they usually do pull back on Butcher making that decision, like, of being just the straight up bad guy. Like, there's always, like, some thread there that kind of keeps him. Like, he makes that decision to, basically spare Huey. I feel like the moment he had with Ryan would have been one of those moments. But, I don't know, you could probably argue both ways. Like, he was emotional, et cetera, and he felt like that was probably the best thing. He thought that was protecting him. I don't know. I just didn't like that moment when it happened. It wasn't even that I was just like felt bad for Ryan. I'm just like, that just doesn't feel right to me. But that could just be my own take on it.
Yeah, I mean, at least the narrative decision of doing the Compound V stuff with Huey and Butcher, at least with Huey at the very end, he kind of makes up for it because Starlight is about to get killed by Soldier Boy, and he has the decision of taking the Compound V, and luckily he refuses and raises up the lighting in the room to give Starlight more power, and it's like, okay, so there is like a little there was like a nice result out of it. He makes the right decision, and it's just like they don't do that with Butcher, where essentially Butcher just ends up ruining everything once again, kind of. I
don't know. I mean, I think you kind of mentioned this, and I think the more I think about it, I do kind of feel this. Like, all 3 seasons are good, but we're getting to a point where I think things are starting to feel maybe a little stretched thin, or like where the character bouncing back and forth or certain tropes.
The writing takes a subtle dip.
I don't even want to say it's the writing, because I think the writing quality is still really good. I think it's more how long can they stretch some of these character arcs slash behaviors. Like, I feel like some of these characters should be moving past certain points. And
there
maybe
is... Oh, good.
No, say what you're saying.
I was gonna say there is some like that's the one thing I like, is other than those couple plot threads we were talking about, that's the one great thing about this show, is it gives every character like a great arc. Every character has like a fantastic arc, in my opinion. Everything that happens between Kimiko, Frenchie, Mother's Milk, everyone has like
I liked
really
MM's
good...
arc. Like, I feel like he had kind of... I'm trying to remember back to the other seasons now, but I feel like he hasn't had a whole lot of time to really shine or get a whole lot of information about him. So seeing how Soldier Boy has impacted his whole history and his ties to things, I think was pretty interesting.
Even a character like A-Train has had a fantastic arc. Like, the whole scene at the Hero-gasm where like Huey is like confronts him, and
he breaks us like, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Huey wants him to like say something bad, and then A-Train is just like, no, you're right, man. What I did was totally messed up. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna think about that forever. And Huey is clearly hopped up on the Compound V, wants him to say something to make him punch him in the face, and it's just like, I don't know, that there's some like really great scenes. This show still is really... There's some fantastic scenes here.
Yeah. I do think Huey, though, has been repeating his arc a little bit. Like, I think that's what... Maybe that's just when I think back, like, that's standing out now is kind of like a sore spot for me. I'm kind of tired of Huey. But everything else, I think overall, I definitely want to see where it goes. I am probably, like everybody else, I'm just waiting for Homelander to snap. Like, I feel like that's the next big thing that could happen, right? Is for him just to basically really not care. I almost felt like that should have happened this season, but the Soldier Boy stuff kind of brought that back down. But that's really what this whole show has been building towards, is Homelander just going crazy. And I mean, as much as you don't want to see it, because that's like the worst thing, that's also where this whole thing is kind of going to. So I'm hoping season 4 gets us there. If it drags it out longer, I don't know. Because really, what's Homelander's arc beyond that? Like, what else can he do? He's not going to all of a sudden turn good from this, right? I don't think he can back down from where he's at. And to be fair, I know nothing about the comic, so if he does, I'm sorry.
I mean, maybe Homelander creates Ryan to be, or pushes him in a direction to be worse than him. Maybe that is the ultimate direction, is that Homelander to stop Ryan from killing everything, but that doesn't...
See, that just
That
doesn't
doesn't
feel
make
like it's
sense for
in
Homelander.
Homelander's arc at all. Like, I feel like Homelander wouldn't care. He'd be like, great, because he thinks both of them are better than everybody, right? They're superior beings, and
But it could make sense if Homelander has a sense of like he does very much have a superiority complex though, so maybe
if they give him a soft spot to that regard in the next season, I'm not gonna like it. Like,
really
I don't know. I
that
mean,
he wants Ryan to be like him, but ultimately he wants to be the one on top and Ryan wants to
that's
be on top.
that's really what it is. Like, they've alluded to him. He cares he has a son, and I can get that. He's got a messed up, creation upbringing, but this character at his core is pure narcissism. Like, it's about him all the way. So I think anything where he all of a sudden puts Ryan or whoever above him, I think is at some level always going to feel out of place. I mean, if you try to justify it that he's had, like, I don't know. I just don't feel like he should characteristically have that change where he would even care about his son to that level beyond his needs.
Maybe
So
they could find a way to remove his powers and then Ryan seeing him with his powers removed, then all of a sudden, thinks of him as useless, and then all of a sudden that might be an interesting take of him being more human and then having to
maybe.
deal with the consequences of what he's done with Ryan, you know what I mean? Like maybe they find a way to take the radiation aspect of Soldier Boy,
Right.
create
Remove his
serum to
powers.
remove powers. That might be interesting, and then he has to deal with Ryan and try and because then Ryan's the most powerful. I mean, there's some interesting directions they could go in.
Yeah, I think I
That
feel.
would flip things on Homelander too.
Yeah, I think the problem is I see how they would want to play out that story arc. 'Cause here's the thing: if he loses his powers, then Butcher's goal would be, okay, I can kill Homelander now. But I can already see where they'd go with that. They'd get to the point where Butcher's about to kill Homelander because he has no powers. He's like, you know what? A worse punishment is to let you live. And I think that would just be the stupidest thing, because then it's going to be this contrived thing where Homelander gets his powers back, and we're like right back to where we started. Like, I think what I'm getting at is I'm feeling the stretch that you're kind of mentioning of like, okay, we've been on these story beats for a long time. The whole thing has been Butcher trying to get Homelander, and I feel like we're getting to the point where we kind of need that payoff. And if they do something to stretch it further out in the next season, I'm going to start feeling a little cheated, if that makes sense.
Definitely have things lined up. I'm very intrigued by some of these plot elements, like what exactly is going to happen with Butcher now that we know he has just a few months to live. Still curious
I don't think
about
that's
what
going to end
happens
up
with
being a
Ryan
major
and
thing.
Homelander.
I think
Yeah.
Butcher will find a way to be around longer. Like, they'll come up with some cure, some other superpowered something that keeps him alive. Like, this show, I think, would have a hard time surviving with Butcher not being around, Like, who's then the opposition really to Homelander that we're going to care about? Huey?
No.
MM? Frenchie? Like, and I definitely don't want to watch a show that's just, Soldier Boy versus Homelander. So, like, Butcher has to stick around. If they kill him off, I'm not sure what direction the show could take. So I'm sure there's a cure in the next season that's going to keep him going.
I will say that was kind of a disappointment as well at the end of this season, is the fact that everyone basically lived. Like, I mean, we talked about it off the stream a few days ago. But the whole idea of a show like this versus Game of Thrones, where for the longest time Game of Thrones was great and epic because of the how unpredictable it was, where it could kill off anyone, no one was safe, could go in any direction, and then towards the latter end of the series, it waned because people started to get plot armor. It felt like they were, they just refused to do things that they used to do, and it became very predictable. Whereas the latter end of this season, the whole Maeve and Soldier Boy thing, I'm not saying I wanted either of them to die, but feels like it was necessary. I mean, now all of a sudden, now Maeve is a wasted character because now she has no powers, and now
I don't say she's wasted. I mean, I agree. I don't think I need to have characters die out of nowhere. I mean, this is kind of this show has kind of set itself up to be that kind of show, though, where you are kind of expecting the unexpected death here and there. So I think my bigger issue with Maeve is not even that she lived. I mean, okay, that's fine. But it was such a better story beat if she would have died. That's something I feel like this show hasn't had much, is characters going out strong, like having a good, complete story arc besides just randomly dying. Like, that is one thing. Like, some characters who die just die out of nowhere. There's no resolution to their story arc or whatever. They're just, bam, they're gone.
Has the
So
show had someone major die?
I won't say
Oh, other than
major.
a couple of the Vault people?
Yeah, like you've had Black Noir. Like I don't think you've had like
I don't think Black Noir's dead.
major. No, I don't think you've had major people die. Like you think about the core of the boys, Frenchie, Butcher, and Huey. They're all still around. Kimiko, she's still there too. Most of the seven is still there, barring like Black Noir.
I guess
a couple.
Becca's the only one.
Yeah, but man, I don't think
And
she was essential.
Homelander's mom, girlfriend.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you could argue how main those characters were, but
Mhm.
I guess my point being is, I feel like Maeve would have been a nice change of pace because her story would have really felt complete. You know, like she's felt a lot of guilt over what's happened, how she was going to reconcile. Because I mean, she's not innocent in this whole process either. She never stood up to Homelander with something crap down on the plane or any of that kind of stuff. Like she was complicit to it. So that her taking down Soldier Boy could have been some true resolution to a character, and then her, dying at the end. Like that could have given some finality to that, sacrifice. And no character I think has really gotten that. No character that has died has had that. They've just been weird deaths. So I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a missed point, but maybe that's just not what the show is. The show is not about giving you that nice, satisfying death for a character. And maybe Maeve is going to come back and have some other crazy crap happen to her, and she'll have some unexpected death, and all be pointless. Maybe that's the whole point of this thing. It's just all pointless, Chaz. I don't know.
Oh, maybe.
There's my
I guess real quick, I just want to mention a few scenes before we move on. I really liked some of these Homelander scenes. Man, are so freaking good.
They're the best scenes. Like
Homelander and the girl attempting suicide on the building, and he finds out Stormfront committed suicide.
And he's just like, just go, just do it,
just go. And then she's like frightened of him, and she's like, no, I don't want to. And you know what he does?
It's messed up.
It's horrible.
Like he is honestly, he's the reason I watched this show. Like
he really is.
I love Keith Urban. He's great.
Carl Urban.
Carl. Why did I say Keith? I'm thinking someone else. Carl Urban is great. I like his portrayal of Butcher, but all his scenes are just fine. All the Huey scenes are just fine. Anything really happening with the boys are just fine. When Homelander's there, that's when the tension jumps up. You really don't know what's going to happen. Like it's a much better show when he's on the screen.
There's other scenes, man. I remember, like, I loved the scene at the end of episode 2 where Homelander, like, onto the live audience is like, he's just like, no, I'm tired of being controlled by by you guys. I'm better than you. You should be worshiping me. And he's just like, I'm not listening to you anymore. They kind of waste that whole plot though, because like he talks about how he's done with everything, and then afterwards they tell him that his numbers are up, and he immediately reverts back to like, oh cool, all right, I'll walk the line again. You know, they kind
that's the
of
whole point. He's on the edge of that snapping moment. So it's like he goes as far until he gets appeased, and it's just like at some point I think it's like it's gonna bottle up until he pops. So I think that's kind of where they're getting towards. And I think it's just, at least for me, I'm overly anticipating that popping moment. So I agree. I think the back and forth on that's getting a little old. I need to see just that boilerplate moment, or that popping moment where he just goes for it.
Oh, I totally forgot. There was the great scene of him talking in the mirror to his like other half, where he's like
Very Willem Dafoe.
Very Willem Dafoe, where he's like, you're where you're at because of your power, and all. That's just like, it was kind of a neat scene. Another scene I really liked was one of my favorite quotes is anytime him and Ashley are talking, it's just like the most like, dang it, Ashley, you know, it's just she's doing something and she messes up, and he says, is your idiot brain getting effed by stupid? And I love how like it's so mean to say to somebody, and then like literally a few scenes later she says to her. Yeah. To her other person, and it's like his anger and frustrations is getting like, you know, it's like going down the line. It's like it moves on to her, and then she, you know, passes that anger and frustration on to somebody else, and I don't know.
Yeah, that's a whole nother character. Man.
Yeah. I guess my last thing I'll just mention is I love the quote from Homelander where he's being threatened by Starlight, where she's going to release the tape of what happened on the plane, and he says, Oh, it's a great scene where he talks about how if he were to destroy the whole planet, how he would do it, and he's like, I would attack the media stations first, and then I'd take out the main military hubs, and like it was great. And then he says, he's like, I prefer to be loved, but if you take that away from me, being fear is a freaking okay.
Yeah.
And great quote. There's some he really has some of the best scenes in the entire show.
Agreed.
So you're looking forward to season 4 overall?
Yeah.
I would say I am.
Yeah, as I said, I hope it makes some bigger strides. Like, I don't know how long this show is supposed to run for. I know you had thought you saw something that was like 5 seasons.
I
and
thought I did, but I don't know for sure.
regardless if you did or not, I feel like that's honestly probably a good length. Like, I think season 4 can make some like big kind of movements for stuff, and then one more season to kind of like wrap it up. I feel like if they stretch it 6, 7, 8 seasons, I'm not going to be nearly as keen on the show at a certain point because I can already kind of feel it now.
We've mentioned it, but yeah, I feel like some of those plot threads are starting to kind of cycle up, like the Butcher, the Huey stuff. It's like, okay,
Honestly, I feel like they should kill off Huey. Like, really? Like, I think that's going to spur some character movement. And what does Huey really do at this point? Like, season 4, kill off Huey. That's what I'm going with. We don't need him. So, season
I
4
feel like
prediction.
he's kind of the main character,
Well, he
though, other than
is.
Butcher.
Well, okay, well, that's what we all thought about with Game of Thrones. We're like, oh no, Sean Bean's the main character, and then all of a sudden chop off his
Yeah.
head, and we're like, oh, uh-oh. So, I don't know. I mean, I know he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be, at some level, the audience view into this world, but I think where they've taken the character and how they've kind of, I don't know, just not developed his character, where he's still back and forth, back and forth. Let him make some last minute righteous moral decision, die. Let Homelander kill him. I think that should, Homelander, kill Huey. That's my prediction for the next season.
Just one more last question. Do you hope this show, would you rather see like a positive ending or more of a negative ending? Because I don't see how this show could have a positive ending. I mean, I would think it has to end with.
I kind of expect a neutral ending. Nobody gets what they want. I don't think it's going to be like a bad ending like Homelander destroys the world kind of thing. I think they're all just going to, like, all these characters are all just going to end up exactly where they don't want to be. Like, some will be dead, some will be exactly where they're at with no way to get out of it. But ultimately, the world's not going to care. And the whole world's just going to keep on going. I bet there'll be like another corporation doing something that's kind of, superfluous to this. I feel like that's kind of the way I view this show. Is like, nothing these guys are doing is going to matter. They're all going to end up in a bad spot, and the world's just going to keep on
Does it have
ticking.
to end with Ryan kind of at the top of the totem pole? I mean, I think maybe.
Maybe not. I mean, I don't know. Ryan could go either way for me. They could use him as a big
I'll be
MacGuffin,
honest,
or they could.
I feel like Ryan should die. I feel like Ryan should die, and that should infuriate Butcher, and it should be something Homelander does because of his ego, where he can't let one other, I feel I agree with you. He has to have that because I feel like you've said it before, but they're building up to him walking off the edge.
Yeah, he's got to have that tipping over point. So whether it be Ryan dying or somebody needs to just lose it. Kill Huey, kill Ryan, kill somebody, and just trigger somebody, and the show needs to then take that next step into whatever crazy arc that's going to be. But I don't think this show is going to end with the world being destroyed or anything weird. I also don't think it's going to be happy for anybody. It's never been what this show is about. So I'm thinking just middle of the road, nobody ends up getting what they want, so maybe like one side character, I don't know. But we can move on.
Yeah, I feel like it's time we move on to our final topic of the day.
This will be a fun
Something
one.
that I just came out that me and Phoenix were actually able to go out and watch is Dragon Ball Superhero. So what a weird name.
Yeah.
But I'll let you go first because I don't. I want to hear your thoughts first. I'm
Okay.
nice.
So I will preface this by saying I am more positive on Dragon Ball Super in general, I think, than really you are. I know you haven't really watched much of it. You've seen like the movie portions of it a little bit. And to be fair, like, I did not like the majority of the first half of Super. The stuff that was, wrapped up into those first few movies, the Frieza stuff and the original Beerus stuff, I didn't care for any of that. Honestly, the stuff I really liked in Super was the Trunks, Goku, Rose stuff. I don't know if you know anything about that story arc at all. That's actually, it feels more like Dragon Ball Z. It's a lot darker. And And I thought that was a really solid arc. And then they have like a tournament at the end of Super, which no stakes. It was just a bunch of fight scenes. So I didn't care about that. So really, I guess honestly, there's about a third of Super I actually really like, but it was good. So I took that positivity and tried to roll it over into this. I think also it's just I haven't watched or been involved in any Dragon Ball related content in so long, and just I forgot this was even coming to theaters. So I was like, that seems like a fun thing. Go hang out in the theater, watch the DB whatever on the screen. It'll be a good time.
If you don't know, I'm a huge Dragon Ball fan. It's my favorite anime. I have Dragon Ball, covered the entire original show so far. So I just wanted to throw that back.
Best videos on the channel. If you haven't watched them, you need a quick summary on Dragon Ball. Go check those out. Like and subscribe whenever it gets doing Dragon Ball Z. We should start tomorrow. See, better at
doing
this
a better
than
job. A better job of advertising for me.
I know. Anyway, so I came into this one to be really positive. I don't even know why I was so positive, because honestly, when I think back to the last few Dragon Ball movies,
for you, I probably wouldn't have watched it. I wasn't going to go out of my way, but you wanted to. So
yeah, well, it just seemed fun, and I think I just wanted to have fun at the theaters. 'Cause I haven't been in a while, but anyways, when I really think back on it, though, I didn't care for the Broly movie that came out not too long ago.
People were super positive on it from what I've seen, and I
didn't.
I was very middling.
I think because I just didn't like the change they did with Broly. He was a completely different character. I mean, and I think I had a hard time reconciling that to me, like for what Broly was back in Z versus who Broly was in Super.
I looked it up too because I thought in this movie Broly sounded weird. So, but apparently that actor is like they removed him. So it was a different.
He's having some
sort of sexual
on.
misconduct stuff happening.
I don't remember his name.
Allegations or something against him.
That's a whole nother thing. But anyways.
I just thought he sounded weird when the movie. I'm like, that doesn't sound like Broly. I don't know.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So anyways, I wanted to come into this movie positive. And now, I haven't seen any footage of this, no trailers or nothing. I'd seen some stills, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. That looks cool. Man, I knew there were Piccolo had a new transformation or something. Like, all right, that'll be whatever. I did not realize it, and I immediately took a step back when I'm like, oh, this is all CG. I thought they were just
you
initially.
said that in the theater. You were like, "Is the whole movie going to be like this?" And I was like, "I think so."
Because I know they've mixed it in the past. Like that's a pretty common thing. Like to cut on certain animation segments, especially like vehicles and stuff. It's pretty common for anime to do some CG for certain moments of it and kind of blend it with the 2D. And then when I saw the character models and saw that was all CG, I was just like, what? So it took me a while to even try to acclimate to that.
I did not think it boded well or bode.
Bodes well. So
I didn't
bode. That's a weird phrasing for it.
I did not think it transitioned well into fighting. I thought it made the fight scenes look kind of bad in my opinion, because Dragon Ball is all about speed and all that stuff, and it just looked.
And we talked about that a little bit. I'll tell you, so I will say this, like, especially when I was able to kind of look and mentally pause the movie at certain spots, the CG isn't bad. And in still shots, it honestly looks like it's hand drawn. Like they did a really good job, I think, with the outlines, the texturing of it. Like there are moments I think it actually looks pretty good. It's the moment to moment slow movements. Like the broad strokes I think are fine, but when you're watching the characters talk to each other or do something, it just feels a little off. It does not.
A bit uncanny.
Feels a little uncanny because they do. It's hard to act like the 2D animation felt more real, but it did. This felt like video game characters talking. Not that they were bad looking video game characters, but it felt like a video game. And
it felt like a PS2 Budokai game.
I won't say PS2. Honestly, I think if
PS3.
If I was playing, I didn't play the Dragon Ball Z Kakarot game, but if I was playing a current gen game and those are the graphics I had, I probably would have been pretty happy with it. Because I don't think they were on their own bad. I just don't think they translated well into the action, like you were saying, of DBZ. Like we were talking about it some, what gave Dragon Ball animation, especially in the fight scenes, that speed was the fact that they took shortcuts in their animation. Like they wouldn't show every single frame of a character being punched at high speed. There would be big jumps or missing frames where there's characters here, characters here, characters here, zigzag lines everywhere. And I know that seems like a cheap cop-out when you think about it, but it added to the sense of speed, of this frenetic kind of tension that was taking place in the scene. When you have actual 3D models where you can easily animate every single frame of movement, those extra frames actually make it feel slower. At least that's how I kind of anticipated it. Now, and sometimes they did a really good job adding some extra like animated like motion blurs, or some of those like phasing kind of sequences. So it's not like they did a terrible job by any means. I just feel like something was lacking as opposed to the 2D animation that we're used to. I wish they would have done like a mix between them, like we've seen in the past. I didn't like the straight CG, so that was a strike one for me.
Honestly, all of the stuff you're talking about, I would have been able to forgive. But I'm gonna move on to my least favorite part about this movie was the dialogue and the humor. This
Yeah.
was probably the least entertained I've been by a Dragon Ball movie in a long time. I remember mentioning it to you in the theater. I was like, I think Bio Broly is worse, but this is right there with like the Bio Broly. That's my least favorite DBZ movie. So
Yeah.
this movie's humor was so bad. I don't remember laughing at any joke.
Only
All of the
one
stuff.
for me. The part where he was driving the ship and Pan was
Oh, and they
like, "Why are you
mentioned
doing so
Piccolo.
bad?" Because that, at least for me, was a callback to Z. Because they were talking about how Piccolo couldn't drive. He's like, "Well, I never got my license," and that's true. In the DBZ little side episode, we were learning how to drive. He never got his license. So I thought that was cute.
Oh, there was another joke. The henchman of the Red Ribbon guy, when he's driving in the car, he has like a rounded out space in the rooftop for his
Oh
hair.
man,
I saw that and I was like,
yeah, but that was also just kind of like goofy. What, I don't know.
it
No, I agree with you overall about the humor.
was extremely corny. I actually thought it was kind of cringy at some points.
Yeah.
The whole Beerus like fawning over the one character that I'd never heard of. I was like,
To be fair, like Japanese Dragon Ball, if you go back to like original Dragon Ball, you've got some weird pervy interactions like Roshi and Bulma. There's some weird interactions there in original Japanese Dragon Ball. There's some in DBZ. The American version, they remove a lot of it, but
well, it felt more on brand back then. I guess because that anime was the time for me when it was made. Like this being made in 2022,
everybody's a little more PC. And
everyone's a little more PC, and I'll be honest,
it
feels
felt
like,
uncomfortable to me. I didn't like
yes.
it.
It feels like nowadays this Dragon Ball, not anime, but Dragon Ball it feels very tailored towards a large demographic now. I feel like that's part of the reason you could attribute that to any other IP, but like I feel like that's why Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball and Z were so great. Is just I don't know. Maybe it feels like because it's like a startup, a startup thing. It's artistically free, and it just I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to kind of even draw a comparison to. I don't know.
I mean, it's tough. It's tough to put my finger on. I just felt.
I know what you're
this felt
saying.
very-
And I guess my thing is I'm not sure exactly why Super it does hit the tone that it does right now because it doesn't throughout the entire show too. This feels almost like a different Super to me too. Like I hate to
Really?
almost.
Okay.
And now, to be fair, Super does have some moments like this. Like there are some tones where Super does not feel like Z the whole time. The parts I like about Super usually lean towards the more Z feeling stuff, but this movie felt like the worst parts of Super to me, like all kind of shoved into one thing. So it's like they're doubling down on the stuff that I'm not a big fan of. They had like weird fourth wall breaks, which seemed out of place for Dragon Ball.
Yeah, a little crazy about Piccolo. Like I think he looked at the screen and said something to us at one point, and I was like,
Yeah. Unless we misinterpreted that. It felt like a fourth wall break. But yeah, the writing, dialogue, like it's hard to say if it was. I don't know if I want to say it was bad because I'd almost have to go back. I don't want to act like all the dialogue in DBZ was great because there was plenty of cheesy stuff in DBZ, but I know because I went back and rewatched some episodes not too long ago, and I was like, that's a little cringy, that's a little whatever. But we watched at a different time. It was a different time. We have nostalgia kind of wrapped up into it, so we interpret that differently. Here, it feels worse, but I'm not sure if that's because I don't have the nostalgia kind of painting over this particular Dragon Ball incarnation the way I do with Z. So I don't know. I'm hesitant to really draw a comparison saying this is bad Dragon Ball writing or bad Dragon Ball dialogue. It might be, but I'm not saying we haven't had anything just as
I even
bad
think that's
before.
a fair comparison, comparing it to old Dragon Ball. I mean, I think if you compare this to like writing on My Hero Academia, I feel like
Yeah, but I
that's
wouldn't.
better writing and more entertaining, and there's actual jokes in there, and that's
Well,
more modern.
but those two animes are so different from one another. Like they're different. Like I mean, that's probably an unpopular opinion, but I think a lot of the writing in My Hero could be better than some of the stuff in Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball comes across pretty contrived. It's all about getting to the fight. Um,
Well, that's fair. I mean, I'm not going to argue against that.
I guess that's what I'm trying to get at is Dragon Ball Z, Z particularly, Dragon Ball you could argue a little differently. Z has always been about building to the next fight. Now they've done a better
Old school
job.
Dragon Ball is definitely more reliant on the narrative. Like the narrative does mean a bit more. I'll agree with you
Yeah.
there.
Z, less so. It was about getting to these big powerhouse moments for a new transformation, new whatever. Not that they didn't have story arcs and what on between. Some of them were really solid, but I think that was the main kind of push. This, I don't know. In general, if I'm not comparing, I didn't like the writing in it. I will agree with that. In this new movie, writing was meh. The plot, I didn't think was all that engaging. For the first, like, 3/4 of the movie, I didn't care about where we were getting at. It just felt a little forced.
I remember saying it in the theater, man. The only parts about this movie that I get a rise out of was all of the opening stuff that showed like modern renditions of some of the events that happened in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. That was the only stuff where I was like, yeah. Yeah. They were showing like some
Yeah.
of the stuff that had happened between Goku and Red Ribbon and all that stuff. That was so cool. And
I
I
think
don't know.
the whole time, what kind of kept me trying to stay positive was I knew that there was a new cell that was popping in. He was like, that was like the big bad. I'm like, okay, I could let go of most of this trash writing, most of this bad CG, if we get a cool cell, reincarnation at the end of it. Because once again, a lot of other stories in Dragon Ball, the writing's been meh, but you get to the cool fight, and I would have been okay with that.
Talking
This
about we got a big kaiju battle at the end of your Dragon Ball movie. You didn't like that?
this was the worst route they could have taken Cell. Like, when you think about Cell as a villain, he is one of the more calculating, intelligent enemy.
Very charismatic.
Very
Very
charismatic. He's very
charismatic.
narcissistic. Like, there's a lot of personality and character to Cell. The Cell they brought here is literally just a giant monster. He never says a word. He just yells and grunts the entire time. There is no strategy to his actions, no motivation to it. He's just this big powerhouse thing. And it's just the most wasted character. Like, why make him Cell? Make him anything else, and I probably wouldn't have cared nearly as much. Really, that's almost more how I would have expected like a Broly, like just a roided
Yeah.
out
Oh, yeah.
rage Broly. Like that could have made more sense, but this was just a giant red Cell, and not even necessarily a better version of him because this one had a built-in weakness.
Yeah.
I don't know. He
That's
felt
why
like
his name is. We said in the movie. That's why his name is Cell. Is because if you don't eliminate him down to the very last cell, he can regenerate. That's what makes him. That's what makes him so powerful.
Yeah.
And another reason why that makes him so powerful in Dragon Ball Z is because he has the anatomy of a Saiyan. Every time a Saiyan is brought to near death or is
He gets
beaten down
stronger,
badly,
yeah.
when he regenerates, he becomes stronger. That's why Cell was so hard to defeat. Is because every time they'd almost eliminate him, he'd come back even more powerful. And this was
this
like
one has
you
had a
said,
built-in off switch in him. So
yeah, it was very disappointing. And another thing that could be very intriguing about bringing back a Cell character, especially with this whole movie revolving around Gohan becoming what he was before, taking back the mantle of being the world's strongest or the hero of
right.
Earth, is they wasted that whole possible interaction that you could have had of Cell. Like that's part of the intrigue is seeing Cell.
Like Cell would have wanted to have revenge on Gohan. That could have been this
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing. I know this was like a new Cell, but they could have found a way to like have built him from old Cell data where you had the memories or something. I mean, they can contrive
They
whatever
could
they
have
want.
done whatever they want. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's-
like, it was a lot of missed potential. It was all about just they wanted to show off some new transformations for Piccolo and Gohan, but they didn't feel earned. They didn't feel necessary. It just, I don't know, very wasted.
yeah.
Did you care about the two new android superhero brothers?
Nope.
Yeah, they felt I don't know, they felt the same. I mean, I guess they did have different personalities, but when we make two things look identical, it's a little hard.
I thought their arcs were very bad. The the whole aspect of them not realizing they're the bad guys when throughout the thing they know they're capturing a little girl, and they know their whole plan is all world domination type stuff, and they never realize they're on the bad side the whole time. It's like,
Yeah, it's just convenience for convenience sake. They need to have these conflicts. So, I mean, granted, plenty of movies and shows do that. Like, they don't give characters a chance to talk about what's really happening. Because if they took 5 seconds and talked instead of punch each other, the whole movie would be over. But I do find it interesting that they do get to that point. Like, while they're fighting, they do get to a resolution. So, really, there was no conflict up until the very last moment with Cell being brought back. I don't know. The movie just felt like a waste. And even at the very end, when Cell was there and there was the threat that he'd, go crazy and destroy everything, there didn't really ever feel like a lot of tension there. Like, I remember back in the original shows when, like, they were at the most dire moment, like, either at the end of the Cell saga or end of Boo or whatever, people were seriously concerned that, okay, this is the end and the whole world's going to get destroyed or whatever. But in this, you got Bulma cracking jokes at the end of Krillin, like, while giant red cells, beating Gohan to the ground and holding Piccolo's semi-dead body above his head. It's just, I don't know. That's one thing I feel like Super's done a bad job with in general, barring a couple of arcs. There's no tension to, like, anything. And maybe it's just because we're all at this point with Dragon Ball that we're like, we know they're not going to kill off main characters. We know it doesn't really matter. There's always a way to bring the Earth back. So maybe tension's kind of a lost, I don't know, feeling in these types of movies or shows, but really didn't feel it here.
I mean, I guess if there is like a thing to kind of like think back on is, I'm kind of looking, but to be fair, all of the Dragon Ball Z movies, even though I have a lot of nostalgia for them, not necessarily all of them were great.
Yeah.
I'd say maybe half to 60% of them were really good in my opinion. But they all can't be the world's strongest or Dead Zones or Tree of Might. Those are some of my favorites. Lord Slugs. I mean, you do have Broly. I remember Broly, or Bio Broly more in particular, was the one I don't remember liking. Um, Shoot, any other I'm seeing in here? I didn't really care for Fusion Reborn, Wrath of the Dragon. Some of the latter ones, in my opinion, weren't that great. But I mean,
A
they
lot of
weren't
the
all
movies
bangers.
have always had an issue because they have to quickly, introduce a brand new enemy and build a
And resolve quick.
conflict. It
Yeah.
can never be anything that's going to have a major impact because it doesn't ever canonically tie back into the show. Or at least, I don't know if canonically is the right word. I don't feel like, were they canonical? I don't think they were. I feel like they were
I don't remember.
offshoots. Even if they were, they couldn't ever have
I
impact on the
think
major storyline.
I think all of them were offshoots. Yes, I
Yeah.
don't remember any of them really tying into anything.
So that makes it tricky, but back then you watched the movies for different reasons too. Like you watched them for those just awesome kind of fantasy fight moments that you would get. And I feel like they did a better job of realizing that. I think because the fight scenes and I'll be honest, the fight scenes in this movie didn't do it for me. Maybe it was the animation style, maybe it was just how the fights were choreographed in it. I don't know, but I don't know. Nothing about this really checked off the boxes I wanted it to check off. Even the
Still say,
transformations I didn't care about. Did you like giant orange Piccolo?
not really.
What about super gray haired Gohan?
It's fine.
But I feel like they that version of Gohan felt really similar to I know you haven't watched Super here, but like was it Ultra Instinct Goku they did towards the end of the Super arc? Kind of just felt like that. So it's like
Yeah.
I think they're having a hard time figuring out where to go now. I mean that's I think the issue you run into with any of this Dragon Ball stuff, you have the power creep, and how do you gauge power levels and show one thing greater than another? It's
I definitely think a lot of the artistic decisions is a lot of the turn off for Super for me. Like you said, I don't really like some of the new evolutions. I don't like the naming of a lot of the new levels. It,
they're running
we
out of
mentioned
just
it.
places to go. I think is part of it.
We mentioned it. I mentioned it in the movie. Part of my part of the reason why I loved Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z so much is, yes, I admit it. Even towards the end, they began to lose it, but for the longest time in those shows, you could there was like a given like level set that you could actually like keep track of how powerful characters were becoming. That was that was done through a lot of the scouter based stuff, and then I'd say towards the latter end of the Cell Saga, you began to kind of lose power levels. Definitely when you got to Majin Buu, people were so much higher than you could calculate. But like, I don't know. I always kind of enjoyed that fact that you could kind of follow and like compare.
Well, it happened
And
too at a certain point, and I know a lot has happened in Super, but power levels didn't necessarily like because they achieved a new like transformation. It wasn't that that transformation was stronger necessarily than something else. Like they had like think from like different modes almost, and each mode has its own benefit. Like they had different like god modes later on, but it was a thing like well you couldn't go into god mode for very long, so it wasn't worth using, or it only did this and that. So it became less about power levels and knowing like which weapon to use at a certain fight. And I don't know, that became hard to keep track of, at least for me, like knowing what each thing meant, when they should have this power level over another, and I don't know.
and I will say for anyone who like me kind of avoided Super, Phoenix said it in the theater, but don't let this be a representation, I guess, of Super, because
I don't think, yeah.
this was a very bad effort in my opinion. Like if this was an accurate representation, I never would go watch Super. But
Here's the thing, it's not like, so Super does, some of the tropes in here that you may not like are in Super, but I feel like this is all the bad tropes shoved into one thing. Super has some cool stuff in it. I personally, if you've watched nothing else in Super, I recommend the Trunks arc. It feels very much like the future Trunks stuff from back in Z. And it's got some dark, atmosphere to it. So if you're into that style, that one felt the most like Dragon Ball Z to me.
that that reminds me so much of GT. Like I know a lot of people don't talk about GT, but like GT was like that for me as well, where like for the most part most of it wasn't great,
Mm-hmm.
but there was the one arc where I'm like the whole baby saga with Vegeta.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great arc in my opinion. Like once they started getting into a lot of the Shenrons and stuff, that was like way past me, but like GT in my opinion, if you guys haven't seen, which I don't think many people have gone out of their way to watch GT, but I don't know. Maybe Super's like that. Would you say was there only like really one major arc where you're like that was worth watching?
Yeah, there's fluff in there too, and there's stuff you're not gonna like. I think what makes Super hard too is because the first like half of the entire show is a retelling of those two movies. The was it Resurrection of
Really?
F and
Broly,
the not Broly, the God one where Beerus was introduced.
Battle of the Gods,
Um,
I think it was called.
yeah, that's it, Battle of the Gods. They add more to it, and they actually change some things about it, but I had a hard time going back and rewatching those after watching the movie because the big story beats are the same. So honestly, I'd say watch the movies, skip watching the show up to that, and then just watch the Trunk stuff.
Enough. I
Sorry.
mean, I'm trying to think of anything else I have to say, man. This movie was so kind of. It's crazy to think I was very, very down on it. I was kind of cringing at certain points during
I
the
wouldn't
movie.
waste your money to go see this in theater. It's not worth. I mean, theaters are expensive. That was what we are kind of mentioning at the top of this podcast. Is movies are costly. That's why they're going down, and I don't think this is a good reason necessarily to go out. I mean, if you
I
okay,
think it was like $30 for me to watch this movie.
if I think the only way I think this might be worth it is if you have a lot of friends who all just love Dragon Ball, and you can go
Yeah.
there and I don't know, you split a popcorn so it's not draining your wallet too much, or see it at a theater that maybe is like a matinee. There's fun to be had here if you really gauge your expectations. If all you care about is just I want to see some Dragon Ball, hang out with friends, sure. But if you want to watch this for a quality Dragon Ball story, wait till it shows up on Crunchyroll. Watch it there.
This reminded me a lot of the first Michael Bay Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, where we all watched it as a group, like 6 or 7 of us, and I walked away super happy because we all hung out. But then when I thought about
Yeah.
the movie, I was like, that wasn't very good.
Yeah, like anything's better with friends. I mean, if you can make a event out of it, you go hang out, sure, it's gonna be a good time. That does not make it a good movie. That was, I think, our issue with Love and Thunder. Like, I had a good time watching it. It was a terrible movie, though. I hated the movie. So same kind of thing here. Don't waste, 30, $40 to get a big popcorn, giant drink, best seats in the house kind of thing. Save your money if you can, or at least see your matinee.
Don't help Regal. They'll be fine. They don't need your money.
Some of these theaters do if you want to have it.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, okay, support your theater, but kind of like back to what I was saying earlier, it's not going to matter. Like they're going down. So.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that was Dragon Ball Superhero. I guess looking forward, what do we got for the next episode? The one good thing about this week is I remember saying last week, hopefully this next week would have more news. I feel like this week had quite a bit. I'm very curious to see what next week looks like. So what do we got? I'm currently playing a game I should be done with. I'll talk about that on the next one. What do we got? I don't have a TV show or nothing, really.
We'll find out. Maybe we'll skip a week and you guys don't have to listen to us. Yay.
No, nonsense. You're getting paid good money to show up here, so.
Oh, yeah. Pull me out of your basement.
So what did you want? Would you want to talk about WandaVision if I tried to go out of my way to watch it?
If you watch it, yeah. I recall that show well enough. I think we can chat about it for a bit. That one or Loki.
I'm watching Doctor Strange. I'm a little bit more intrigued by some of the Marvel stuff, but only like the couple main shows. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, WandaVision's not long. You can run through that pretty quick, so I'd be down to chat about that one.
I'm not gonna watch She-Hulk. If I'm gonna watch a real attorney at law, I'm gonna go watch Harvey Birdman or something.
I think I will probably try to watch the first episode just 'cause I'm so curious. Like, I don't think I'm gonna enjoy it, but critics have been all over the place on it. A lot of them are very favorable. Some are tearing it.
I saw a lot of people saying it's a good sitcom.
It's might be one of those things you have to just gauge your expectations accordingly and maybe not try to be super critical, but I think that's hard nowadays, especially with MCU stuff. Like, we've been trained to want to tear it apart. But,
yeah.
the trailers I've seen have not been overly exciting. The CG does not look great. I don't know, but maybe I'll watch that first episode. But watch WandaVision. We can chat about that. If I get a chance to watch She-Hulk, the first episode, I'll let you know.
Cool. Yeah, and any other news that pops up, guys, we will definitely look forward to that. Do you have any game or anything you have on the back burner for this week?
No, I've been sucked back into Returnal, man. Since I started playing with you, I've honestly been going back to that tower more for Ascension. I've been enjoying that a lot more now that I'm kind of spending some time with it. I
did the house section, so now you can help me.
I'll get those fragments.
Further on, get those fragments, so.
Right.
I did that. It didn't take me long. It took me maybe half an hour.
Yeah, that game every time I play it, it becomes more and more favorable towards me. Like, it's probably going to be one of my favorite games, just period.
It was so good, it makes me want to keep playing it, and also it makes me want to go back to Hades as well.
Yeah, both those games are so solid and both have a lot of replayability to them. So if you haven't played either, I know we've talked about ad nauseum at this point, but if you haven't, check them out. They're both great.
Yeah, both definitely prime games of this generation, I would say. Higher tier, in my opinion. But, yeah, so I guess we've done it all, guys. I guess, as always, what do we say? We say, thank you so much. We love you. Phoenix is going to go... Where's he going to go back down to the basement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need to mop up. It's a little too damp in there.
All right, guys. Well, we love you. We appreciate you. And thank you so much. We will see you on the next week. So keep an eye out. Adios, guys.